why I teach global. I mean, everybody in this room teaches global. So if we were to go around the room and ask people for examples of their work, everybody has an experience and an idea, and all of you are passionate global educators. You teach global through languages and the wider world because you know your students and your school communities need that wider exposure. You need to link your school communities to the outside world. You need to be able to explain our world and our global society in a bigger way. Let me give you two examples why we teach global. You might be aware earlier this year in New Zealand, the horrific attack on a mosque, on two mosques, where 50 people, including small children, were murdered by a, quote, white nationalist. And the extraordinary example of how that country dealt with what is prevalent throughout the world. It happens in London, it happens in the United States. It's an unfortunate hallmark of our 21st century that we're now dealing with nationalism and racism, things that I used to teach in history to my students as something that was in the past. And in New Zealand, this extraordinary courage of this female Prime Minister in the way that she dealt with and brought her community together and took the violence and the hatred that could have been perpetrated. And one of the most extraordinary things she did two things. She went and used her empathy, and maybe that's because she was a female leader. I understand we've got a female Prime Minister in this country right now, based on the one that the UK has just said no to. I'm not sure what the answer is in UK politics, I'll talk about it. But she went and she showed extraordinary empathy and compassion to that community. She brought this community together with her warmth as a leader. It was an extraordinary moment. And also, she closed down this hatred. So she said New Zealand isn't a society that hates Muslims. It's a diverse, multicultural society. If you know New Zealand, they have a large Maori population. The English arrived there only a couple hundred years ago. So she refused to give the terrorist his name. She said, don't say his name. Don't say his name ever in public. Don't give him the oxygen of the publicity of his murder. And if you remember, he used his technology. He actually YouTubed for a short time the murder spree. And this was then broadcast. That's the world we live in. So again, why do we teach global? Because I don't know if you can see, that's my old study as a principal in the UK. Some of you know that it's the Harry Potter school. It's the school J.K. Rowling was a student. So this is the room that the first principal had, Dumbledore. He was called Ken Smith, so I'm always kind of proud that I was in Dumbledore's room. I have no magic, or else I would make school funding much better. But in this room, I have critical thinking students and respond with hate and anger, because otherwise our world gets worse. And the other example I want to use is this, and I'm ashamed of being British for this example, and I used this in London at the British Council conference on the 23rd of May, because it just happened. This Romanian woman, her family, they migrated, they're European Union citizens. They came to the UK for a better life, they work hard, they pay their taxes. She went outside of her house in the north of England and she told some teenagers, could you be quiet, my baby is asleep. This is what they did to her. They beat her senseless. I am ashamed of being English at such moments. And these teenagers said to her, you're speaking Eastern European. So they didn't even know. They're so ignorant. Now, is it their fault? Is it education's fault? I've got a government that is hating Europe right now. So how do we put all this together? And how do we have a message of hope and optimism as educators? Because no matter what we think, and we all know this as educators, we have to put our game face on in our classrooms, in our schools, and we have to be beacons of hope, and we have to allow education to do its magic, to allow those young people to have better answers than we seem to have for the world right now. So there are two very, very simple examples why we teach global to solve this. Now to optimism. In my family, so I come from a family of 5 children. My father was a coal miner. He worked underground digging coal for 40 years. He is not the very tall one, but the one just to the left with the T. That's my dad. And so my dad basically gave his sunlight up to give his kids an education. That's how important education is. We know this. This is why we're in education. And I was really fortunate. I was the first in my family to go to university. I came from an ordinary council estate. Went to an ordinary state school. But I was really privileged to have extraordinary teachers. And one of them is this guy at Bury, he's still alive, called Les Jones. He's 86 now. He was an extraordinary teacher. And do you know, when we get an extraordinary teacher that lights a flame and really impassions the kids and really makes you feel good about learning and wants you to learn more, that's not down to smartphone technology. That's just down to decent charisma, your knowledge. Be very proud of Moldova, and I've made this point today to a couple of people from the ministry. The thing that always impressed me about your country is the status of education still here. In my country, it's down here. That's why I'm here. In my country, we seem to have lost the value of the public good that is education. And the OECD had a statistic this week. Moldova spending on education is like the top 20 countries in the world. Okay, that's a big statistic to show the importance of education here. So good educators are really important, and thanks to people like Les being good educators and giving young people like me an opportunity and really engaging my mind. And I loved history and I loved politics, I loved philosophy. A teacher, and this is why it's ironic with our East and West now, we had a teacher who took us as history students. I was very young then, I looked a lot slimmer and a lot more handsome. But this is what 3 kids does to you. They took us to Berlin when the war, by chance, the war was coming down. We were like 15. And it was an incredible moment to go to Berlin and be at such an important moment of history. And I think that's always left such a strong impression in my mind.